Behind me here is my 2023 Talaria Sting R MX4, and I've had this now for about 6 months, and I've taken it on many excursions and had lots of fun with it. I think I've had it for about 6 months now. So I've had a chance to ride it in varied circumstances, and I have added some accessories to the handlebars, such as a camera mount and cell phone holder. But other than that, it's actually pretty much entirely stock. I remember now too, I've replaced the brake pads on both the front and the back now, but that's a wear item. Other than that, it's pretty much unmodified. So when Kemimoto reached out to me and offered some accessories, I took them up on their offer to try these out and see how well they work. So I'm going to unbox the accessories now, show you what I got, and then I'll install them, showing you that process. And then I'll take the bike out on a brief ride and try them out for the first time. The first accessory that I'm going to install is going to be the simplest one, and that is this right here. This is a mud guard. So that goes on the Talaria about right here, and so it stops the mud from slinging up from the back tire and compacting in this area, which is where the rear suspension is. I published a video called The Mud Run, which I'll put a card above too, where we actually rode a lot in the mud, and this area was quite filled with mud. So this is one of the accessories that I thought, oh yeah, I could definitely use that. That'll help in cleaning up afterwards and just keeps the rocks and mud and the grime out of the suspension components while I'm riding. The second component is this right here, which is some mirrors. Now, mirrors are not really highly sought after in the off-roading world, so I may put these on or off depending on the circumstances. But these are just your generic and traditional side mirrors or rear view mirrors that are on each side. And I'm going to be putting these on because when I'm trail riding, a lot of times I can't tell if there's anybody immediately behind me or not. And also if I'm on the road, it's helpful to know if there is somebody behind me. So I'm going to install these and see how well they perform both on and off road, and if I want to keep them on long term or not. And lastly, we have here the foot peg extensions. So it's just a little bracket here, which I will unpackage. And that goes in this area right here, and it basically extends your foot pegs out from the bike. Where a foot peg extender comes into play primarily is with taller people that want to have the foot peg farther down. Now, the potential limitation is that it will cause the foot peg to be more vulnerable to striking on obstructions below the bike. So that's a trade-off potentially. Going back to the mud guard here, this is roughly where it's going to be positioned. You'll see down here that there's a bolt right there and a bolt over there, and that lines up with the holes here on the sides of this mud guard. And then swinging around up here to the top, there are 2 holes in the mud guard right there. And looking up here, you can see right behind this tail light is some nuts. So it's going to take a basic wrench to get that done, and then it looks like they'll bolt onto the back of this just fine. This mud guard comes with this bag right here that has an Allen key in it with the right sizing, I assume, and then 4 washers. So I'm going to get those unscrewed now, and we'll see how well this installs. Now, something I have found fairly immediately is that this Allen bolt right there, the Allen wrench that they sent it with is too small. It does not fit that at all. And I don't know if that is something that's changed or what, but I guess it doesn't really matter overly much for me. I have a set of Allen wrenches. And if you're doing DIY projects in general in your life, you should probably have a set of basic Allen wrenches around anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get these unscrewed, and then we'll move on to the bolts above. I have finished bolting on the bottom part of the mud guard, and this is now also going through the holes of the top with the tail light here. But I haven't bolted the tail light down yet because you'll see there's a power wire coming around the corner here, and it's causing the mud guard to curve tighter than I would like. And back here, there's a zip tie holding this wire. So I'm just going to snip that zip tie, give myself a little bit more room for this wire to be routed around the mud guard. Okay, it's now fully installed. I left this on. I don't think this is entirely necessary, but I did notice that here at the base, it is slightly wider than the Kemimoto mudguard. So if there's mud coming off at an angle, it will help to protect out, like the back of my leg, I guess. And it just looks better, I think. So I went ahead and left that, but I don't know that you'd really need to. And then this is, of course, the mud guard right here, and it's bolted right here behind the tail running light. And then like I said, clipped a zip tie back here, and now the wire has more slack to just route to the side and then around the corner. So that actually looks pretty perfect. And you can see back here that it's nicely protecting the rear shock and these components. and make it so that it'll be easier to clean later when this just gets piled up with dirt. And then as the suspension travels, this is moving around, so the dirt will just crack and break off naturally off of that. So that's a nice feature of that as well. And I ended up not using any of the 4 washers that it came with. It just didn't seem like they were necessary. There were already 2 there on the mudguard beneath, and the one above had the tail light running across it. There's no need for a washer in that case. The bolt on the back of the running light ended up using an 8mm wrench. That took me about 10 minutes to install, so let's move on to the side mirrors and see how long that takes. The parts that these mirrors come with are 2 parts, really. There's this clamp right here, which I've already put one over here on the handlebar, so you can see it's what clamps onto the handlebar if you don't already have this threaded place for mirrors on a motorcycle, which the Talarias don't come with any mirrors at all, so that clamp is necessary. And then the other accessory is this, which is just an extension bolt. It just adds this much height to the mirror. You can see right here, it will screw into the base that I already have here, and it's the same thread size on top as it is on the bottom. So for instance, if I go grab a mirror, the mirror will screw right in here to the top of this extension with the same threads. So you can see right there, they're both screwed on. I don't think I will want that additional height, so I'm going to leave off that extension piece, but I will hold on to it in case I need it in the future. Pretty basic instructions, frankly, but it has some information. The mudguard didn't have any instructions, but it was simple enough I didn't really need any. And frankly, this is pretty simple as well. I don't think you really need instructions for this. You clamp the clamps on where they need to be. If you already have clamps, then you just screw the mirrors into the existing mounts that you may already have. And so this is the left side installed now. And now I'm going to install the right side. And just like that, the mirrors are installed. Believe it or not, I think this was probably easier than the mudguard actually. Just a little bit easier to access and put on these clamps right here. This is another 8mm wrench to screw in this bolt that comes with the clamps. And then you need another larger, just regular crescent wrench like this, or something to that effect to tighten the tightening nut right there. I guess the other accessory I forgot to mention that I have added in the past are these smaller handlebars for my son James, so that he can hold on while I'm riding, and he just loves riding the Talaria. And now let's move on to the foot peg extender. This is all the parts that come with the foot peg extender. So you have the 2 main brackets, and these are going to be going right here, and then we have the rod here that is connecting between them to give extra support. You can see there's the pre-existing one right there already. And then we have 4 bolts and 2 smaller bolts, so 4 large, 2 small, and then there's these 2 small rubber seals, and then there are 2 sizes of Allen wrench key that came with it. And then here are the instructions. And so I'm going to now go through these instructions and put this on. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually figure out how to stabilize the motorcycle without the kickstand, which for me I've just wedged over here next to my stairway and the couch. But the reasoning, of course, is that the bracket that we're replacing or adding in here to add in the distance is where the kickstand is attached. So we're going to have to remove that. I've gotten this bolt out and the 2 on the other side, and this is my last one holding just it in before it falls down. I just wanted to point out that I found that some of them were quite hard to get out, like really tight. And so if you use the Allen wrench that it came with, you'll definitely want to soak it in WD-40 for a while, something penetrant like this. Let that soak into there, and then also maybe use something like a longer Allen key if you have one, or put an extender on it of some sort. And also the bolts stick out on the back side here, so you can put some WD-40 on the back side, and that helps immensely because there's a lot of grime on the back of the bolt. And so trying to back that bolt out through this threaded hole with all that grime on the back is not very easy unless you have the WD-40 on it. So that's my findings from this little part of the project. The next thing to do is then screw on the brackets on both sides, which I've already done on both sides. So I'm going to move on to the next step now. I have finished removing the, I don't know what this is, but the supporting bar that goes between the foot pegs. And this is the OEM one, and you'll see that that's surprisingly shorter, quite a bit shorter than this Kemimoto one. So I'm going to install this one now and see how that goes. Oh, I just realized why there's such a length difference. The OEM one has this long bolt right here with the nut on it for being able to adjust the width, and yet it is actually being held in there by this screw there. So they're having me remove this entirely, and that's on both sides, and then the new bar goes all the way in here to the end, I believe, and then the little O-ring goes right here on the end to, I guess, keep mud and dirt out of the middle of it. I'm not entirely sure why it needs an O-ring. And now the size comparison makes more sense when you add on those bolts here and here that I've taken off of the bike. So now I'm going to put this on. I've finished installing the bracket on the right side, and then this supporting bar all the way across. and then I've actually screwed it onto that supporting bar on this side as well, so that's why this thing is pivoting right here. But the problem that I'm running into is this kickstand sensor wire. If I try to rotate this up to be able to put these brackets aligned with these holes over here, right here is where the wire is getting taut enough that it just stops it from rotating. And there was a zip tie right here that I already cut, and that's not really giving me enough additional rotational room. So I don't know, I'm going to keep monkeying with this, see what I can figure out. I've unscrewed the bash plate guard here and taken off the cover that was in front of that. So this is similar to what you would do if you're going to be changing the gear oil, which is right here. And this right here is the wire for the kickstand sensor, and it was routed down here underneath this. So I'm going to see what I can do to reroute the wire to be a little bit more directly where I need it to be, and see if I can get the rotation that I need. Good news, I got it all figured out. You can see here the bracket is fully installed, everything is bolted, and I was able to get excess room with this wire, the kickstand sensor wire, by going around over here, and obviously I had to undo this bash plate first and the cover here. So right here behind these orange wires is this rubber boot right here. And this is a junction point for a bunch of different wires, it would seem. And the kickstand wire goes around into that. Now back over here on this side, there, right here where the tip of my finger is, there's a zip tie holding it to this bar here. So you just gently pull on here and pull some more of that wire through that zip tie, and it will pull that rubber boot towards you, at least in my direction, a little bit. But there seems to be enough play in there, that's not a big deal. And then now the kickstand wire can come down around over here, and there's even some play in it, you can see. Now originally it was routed down underneath right there, but that's putting too much tension on the wire, so I'm going to just leave it a little bit loose, or maybe even put it up like that and see if it works okay with putting this cover back on it. So I'm going to put this back together now. I've completed all 3 projects. The mud guard here, the mirrors are looking good. I'm going to get those adjusted once I start going riding, and then the foot peg extender here. This ended up taking me close to an hour. A little bit of that was filming though, so maybe 45 minutes to half an hour roughly to get this done. That took longer than I expected, obviously, because I had to make the sensor wire longer. One of the artifacts I didn't anticipate from this, but I guess it makes sense now that I think about it, is that by lowering this foot peg area, the kickstand is attached to that. So now that means that the motorcycle leans less than it used to. So if I come over here, look at this, you'll see it actually looks pretty upright. So it's more likely or more prone to tipping over with this extender on it. And I imagine there's things you could do about that. Maybe get a shorter kickstand. I'm just going to run with it and see how well this works. When you're off-roading, often the ground is pretty uneven anyway, and sometimes the kickstand isn't long enough. So we'll just see how this goes long term. So let's go for a ride now. So now that I'm on a road riding along, I can kind of get the feel of all these new accessories. Obviously the mud guard I don't feel. The mirrors though, they work fine, but like half the mirror is covered by my shoulder. That's kind of typical, but these are maybe a little bit further inward than other motorcycles that I've ridden. It's nice that they are adjustable out on the tip, of course, so that I can make sure that those are pointed how I like them. And then the foot pegs, the extenders, it definitely is a more comfortable feel. I feel relaxed, my legs aren't as cramped up. But that being said, obviously I'm giving up some ground clearance by having them be lower. So there's give and take to everything, plus the kickstand of course is higher as well. So let's go test the mud guard. I'll certainly be testing the mud guard out more on future rides, but with this brief ride I can see it's going to be my favorite accessory of these 3, because keeping the mud and grit off of the rear shock will prolong its life, or at least the seals on the rear shock, and it'll reduce the amount of time I spend cleaning the bike after muddy rides. Also the foot pegs. The foot pegs are definitely, it's a different feel, and if you're really tall, then I'm sure these are going to be really important. I don't love how the kickstand is higher than it used to be, but actually you can see here the kickstand is just sinking down into the gravel and mud, and so for off-roading purposes it's actually perfect, because the bike would actually be falling over with the way the kickstand was before. I hope it's been helpful to see how these Kemimoto accessories work on the Talaria MX4. And if you have any questions, feel free to post those in the comments section below. I'll post any additional follow-up insights in the future as a pinned comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.